I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Welcome to HoopSpeak Live. No Beckley Mason, no Ethan Sherwood-Strauss. We don't want either of them out there. It's just me, James Herbert, our producer, and we got Benjamin Hochman on the show today. James, show up. Where are you? How are you enjoying the Rudy Gay era?
Oh, it's been fun. I mean, it's just been 2 games, obviously, so I don't want to go crazy with it. But I think if you are in the camp that said, oh, this Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan thing has absolutely no chance of working. They're these inefficient scorers. Neither of them can space the floor. It's just insane. It's ludicrous. Why would they ever do this? Then I think you have to reevaluate that. I know it's not like, okay, this is perfect. This is going to be their future. But it's looked good so far. DeRozan in particular has looked really good. The first game he played with Gay, he had 7 assists. The second game, he got to the line like 14 times. And I think the big thing that we're seeing with Gay there is, like, there was a stretch in the Miami game on Sunday where Ray Allen guarded DeMar DeRozan for quite a while. And that absolutely would not have happened before. They always had the best perimeter defender on him. And when he has the second best perimeter defender, he can usually make things happen. And we're going to see a little bit of that. There was an article by Holly McKenzie on Sportsnet on Saturday where DeMar said, this was from shoot around, he said, maybe I've needed Rudy Gay this whole time. He seems really happy to have him around. Obviously, time will tell, like, was this smart? Like, was getting rid of Ed Davis smart? Was this the best way they could have used Calderon's contract? Was investing in this huge contract a good thing? I don't know. I don't know what this makes this team going forward, but it's certainly been fun so far. Obviously, they lost to the Heat, but everybody expected them to lose to the Heat. Really, it's just given a new energy. The TV ratings were way up. The atmosphere in the building Friday and Sunday was like, it was pretty cool both times.
Here's the thing that I wondered. Like, people killed him for acquiring that contract. Now they got so much money tied up, but I think it's very easy to move that around. Don't they kind of have a direction? Like, what direction were they headed before? They didn't have anything. So at least they, like, have a player now.
Yeah, they seem to have an identity that they're betting on, and that'll be a sort of more fast-paced team, an athletic team. Spoelstra said Sunday they have like 5 or 6 guys who could be in the dunk contest. I don't know if they necessarily have 5 or 6, but with Rudy and Terrence and DeMar on the break and Kyle Lowry theoretically pushing the ball, you can sort of see where this team is going. The only thing is they haven't actually played at a particularly high pace in the first 2 games. Obviously, we're just talking about the first 2 games, but all season they haven't played at a high pace. So we'll kind of see what impact, like, giving Lowry the reins and sticking Rudy in there will actually have on the team going forward. But ideally, if they can actually play some defense, if they can get some stops, then they will be a fast-paced team. But it's hard to get on the break when you can't stop anybody and you can't force any turnovers. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they needed to sort the Calderon-Lowry thing, and you sort of knew who Colangelo favored, who he brought in the summer to run this team. So it wasn't a big shocker that they got rid of him. But I think in getting rid of him and in putting Lowry and Gay together, 2 guys who have been like best friends for a long time, you're basically saying this is our future. With obviously Valanciunas a part of that too, and Ross a part of that too. And DeRozan should be a part of that too. I mean, we'll kind of see if they end up sticking with Gay, DeRozan, and Ross long term, but that doesn't have to be solved. Doesn't have to be solved before this year's trade deadline.
Right. It really doesn't have to be solved for the next 2 years. I mean, the earliest they would have to deal with that is when Rudy's contract is up.
Yeah, so I think as much as people might have killed this thing, and I think I'm not saying that people who criticized it were irrational. I'm not saying that people who question this team's plan and what it was before and what it is now, I'm not saying that that was invalid, but what I am saying is that they still do have time to kind of change this thing around. It's not like this was a playoff team that they broke up. It's not like this is it. It's not like acquiring more assets is necessarily a bad thing. I think it'll kind of depend. Like what this team looks like a year from now is way more important than what it looks like now.
Right, and that's the problem with like trades in the NBA is you have to give it a final grade now, when
Yeah.
usually it takes years for that stuff to work out, but everyone has to rush to judgment now and say, no, this is absolutely bad or absolutely good for them. You actually don't know. I mean, we won't know for a while.
I think it's kind of funny because if you saw on the internet, most people killed it. On national TV, most people loved it from the Raptors' point of view. And you have guys saying, "I hate money trades." Was it Kenny Smith? One of the TNT guys said, "I hate trades that are because of money." But really, every trade is because of money in the NBA, and every team is different. Everybody has a different plan, and obviously, Rudy wasn't like being utilized as a $17 million guy as their third guy on offense in Memphis. So they moved him, and Ed Davis gives him an option where if they say they move Zebo in the summer, or they move him in the next 2 weeks. I doubt they move him in the next 2 weeks, but say they move Zebo in the summer for a wing, and then Ed Davis can slide in there on his with his rookie deal expiring next year and be a big part of their future. I think obviously all of these trades are money related, and to say that Memphis won or lost the trade or that Toronto won or lost the trade is silly right now. I wanted to ask you some questions though before we get to Ben. You were in the building for this fake blackout that the Wolves did. Did you love it? Was it the best thing ever?
One of the worst things I've ever seen. It was the entire break between the first and second quarter, and there was no noise. It was just like they had half the arena lights on, but still had the scoreboard on, so you didn't really think there was a blackout, so there was no realism to it. Hey, there's my dog. And it was just this thing of like they had a fake argument with no sound on the court where you would actually be able to hear it if they were actually yelling at each other because it was silent in there because of this little skit going on, and it was just really, really dumb. It should have lasted maybe 45 seconds at the most, not like 3 minutes. It was just dumb.
Okay. I saw something saying that now Kirilenko is questionable for tomorrow with a quad strain. So is this team cursed? What is happening? How are you not injured yet?
Oh, I mean, I've been dealing with an ankle thing for a while. I don't believe it's cursed because I'm an adult, so I don't really believe in curses anymore. But I do think that maybe it's time to start looking into the training staff, the medical staff. Like, there's something wrong. I don't think it's in the water or anything. Maybe it's a cold weather city. Maybe we should start studying if cold weather cities have more injuries than hot cities. I don't know, but no, it could just be crappy luck. Like that just could be it.
Has that changed kind of the makeup of the team in the locker room? I know they brought in a couple of guys that they signed, like they brought in Chris Johnson and Jelabal, but when the Wolves came through here, it was like the second game of the season, and Kirilenko said that this was the chemistry on this team was unlike anything he'd had in his entire NBA career. He said the only thing that he would compare it to was the Russian national team, and that everybody got along, everybody hung out, um, based on the fact that they haven't won as much as some people thought, and they've had a bunch of new faces, and they've had all these injuries constantly. Has that changed that chemistry in that locker room?
It's surprisingly good still, which does surprise me because with a lot of losses, which I think they're God like 10 games under 500 now, you would expect people to get chippy with each other. Berea it gets frustrated here and there during games, but once he's in the locker room, like everyone's joking around, but it's not like Anthony Randolph and Michael Beasley are joking around with Wes Johnson while the team is mad at all of them. Like everyone seems to be in a good mood and just frustrated with losing, and they just want to win. But no, you haven't had anybody turn on each other yet, and that could just be because it is no longer such a young team that there's a lot of veterans.
Okay, so before we bring Ben on and you can ask for an Anthony Randolph update, I'm going to ask you one more question, which is, what is up with Rubio? Because I watch him and some nights he's doing amazing things. He's making between the leg passes and he's being super aggressive. And then other nights he doesn't quite look like the Rubio that exists in your mind, specifically your mind, your mind. How far along is he? Is he back? Like, what's up with him?
He's been really good the last 5 or 6 games. He actually didn't have a good game last night until the fourth quarter, which he just went off with leading the team in the fourth quarter. Before that, I didn't think he played well. But last 5 or 6 games, he's been really good, really aggressive with the shot, making shots, which is important. And he said that I asked him about it after the game last night, and he said that he feels strong. He feels confident in his conditioning and in his knee now, and he's looking to score because of it. He's looking to be more aggressive. So I think maybe he's breaking through that barrier a little bit, but who knows? He could be terrible the next 3 games. We just don't know. I think now, though, we should talk some Nuggets. I do have plenty of Anthony Randolph questions. Let's bring on the star of NBA TV's The Association, Denver Nuggets, Benjamin Hochman. How's it going?
I'm an Emmy snub.
You got robbed. You really got robbed.
Jim Parsons beat me.
I know, Jim. It was neck and neck. How are you enjoying the Nuggets season? You weren't at home for, I guess, the first 3 months of the season, right? Every game was a road game, and now you have a slew of home games. How has the balance been with the schedule?
It was bonkers. I looked it up. The Nuggets had 17 of their first 23 games on the road. The last team to have that was the 1985 Bulls, and they actually didn't have Michael Jordan. He was hurt at the time. So it was just unbelievable. It was historic how many times they were on the road, and they weathered the storm, as they would say. And now the Nuggets are in great position to probably capture that 4th seed in the West, if not the 5th seed, and be in that playoff series.
I wanted to ask you about Ty Lawson. You wrote something actually about Stephen Curry last week, saying he was a huge snub in the All-Star game. Same draft class, and a lot of people thought Lawson would be the one making that leap this season, that he might be an All-Star. That hasn't exactly happened. He had a pretty slow start to the year. Where do you see him in relation to the kind of expectations that there were coming into the season?
Well, he's definitely not reached the expectations. Now, he has in the last 7 games. I did a piece today in the Denver Post, or denverpost.com. Actually, it's http www.denverpost.com. You can read the story on that website about Ty Lawson. Last 7 games, he's put up Tony Parker type numbers, 20-ish points and 7 assists. He's been playing great basketball. But before that, my goodness, and I see some familiar faces here from my Twitter, like Brooke Kale and Jeff Morton, some of these Nuggets fans. So they already know what I'm about to say, that Ty Lawson was a major disappointment for much of the season because he was so inconsistent. Wildly inconsistent. The fact is that he's the franchise player, and in the George Karl system where the point guard is so important, he was disappearing a lot in the fourth quarter. I mean, we can just name more than 5 games where he basically blew it in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's infuriating if you're a Nuggets fan, but the fact is lately he's been playing great basketball, and by the way, the Nuggets have been winning during that stretch.
This isn't going to be a shocker, but I feel like most fans think that they could do a better job than the actual head coach. And I feel like, especially with Nuggets fans, they don't. It seems to be very polarizing with George Karl and his substitution patterns, his play calling. How would you judge the job he does on a daily basis?
I mean, actually, Andre Iguodala said it best just the other day. He goes, at some point in time, at least one person is hating the head coach, whether it's the guy at the end of the bench who's never playing or the superstar who's not getting enough minutes or not thriving in the system. So, I mean, it is tough to be the head coach, but that's why the head coach gets paid millions of dollars to do his job and sit on that hot seat. You talk about the rotations. There's a lot of frustration towards the end of the game from fans saying maybe they don't need Lawson and Andre Miller on the floor together, or maybe a guy like JaVale McGee should play more down the stretch because he's such an intangible, such a weapon with those alley-oops. So there's definitely a lot of consternation from the Nuggets faithful. And then we haven't even gotten into Jordan Hamilton, who's kind of been a surprise this season. They groomed him all summer. He played in the summer league. He was supposed to be this three-point weapon for the Nuggets, and now Carl doesn't even trust him to play at all. He's probably hesitant to even put him in during garbage time.
What's it been like to observe the George Karl, JaVale McGee dynamic? Because that really fascinates me.
JaVale McGee, he's not as quirky and crazy as everyone says, but compared to other NBA players, I would say he is. I can't tell if he's actually smart or just like dumb and silly and lovable because of it, or maybe he's somewhere in between. But from an actual basketball standpoint, like somebody the other day was telling me that he's like this genius, like this misunderstood genius or something, and which I of course can relate to. And I was like, look, he was the guy that asked Adon Fournier in the locker room around the holiday time if in France they celebrate Christmas. I mean, there you go. I mean, I heard this happen. But from a basketball standpoint, George Karl is a quote machine. He said things like JaVale's been lazy and crazy, and that's definitely not the way we want a player out there. I mean, George Karl's, and I hope I'm not offending him by saying this, but he's a Greg Popovich wannabe, meaning he loves Greg Popovich and what Greg has been able to do. And, of course, it doesn't hurt when you have Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili for a decade. But George loves fundamental. He loves strong and sturdy players, and JaVale is the opposite of that. I mean, JaVale is I call him the big inconsistent. And that's what we're dealing with here. His player efficiency rating is, I think, 21 right now, best on the Nugget, but that's in the sample size of 19 minutes per game. So the casual fan says, well, if he can get you that PER in 19 minutes, surely he'll get you that in 35 minutes. And the head coach, who even with 1,000 wins is perpetually, eternally on the hot seat, will say, no, I'm trying to win ball games here. I'm not going to try to develop JaVale McGee while I'm trying to get the 4 seed. I'm going to play Kosta Koufos, who's our best plus-minus guy, very fundamental, headstrong player, and try to win some ball games. And in the meantime, we're not getting that much JaVale.
They essentially, I mean, they did a little bit more than this, but they essentially switched out Aaron Aflalo for Andre Iguodala this offseason, and everyone expected them to just go crazy, and the road-heavy schedule obviously affected that. But how would you say he's affected the team dynamic so far? Does he fit into what they want to do?
Yes and no. Am I allowed to be so wishy-washy? Because I will be. I mean, from a defensive standpoint, there's no question. Whether it's just the eye test or reading synergy and looking at stats, I mean, he is such a factor in a positive way on the defensive end. And Matt Moore did a huge piece on Iguodala's defense recently at CBS Sports. I myself have done numerous pieces on the aforementioned website. The fact is he changes games with his defense in a positive way. Offensively, though, he can't hit a jumper. And that's a problem in the NBA. Luckily for the Nuggets system, they're more of a layup and three-point team as opposed to the mid-range jumper, which he's suffered with for much of the season. But, yeah, you can question that maybe he's not fully fit into the Nuggets system. And I think Iguodala himself would say that if he was here with us, he would say, look, it's still a process. Glass half full. I've only played 40, 50 games for the Nuggets. Still learning Ty Lawson, still learning Andre Miller and such. But the fact is, he's going to have to be a key offensive weapon. George says this all the time, George Karl. He goes, if you don't have a superstar and you're trying to win in the NBA, your 2 or 3 top players have to have their best seasons ever. And right now, Gallinari, because of his last month, you could argue he's having his best season ever. Lawson, we already talked about him, and Iguodala, probably not.
The Nuggets obviously have a glut of talent on the wing, and with that brings trade rumors around this time of year. I'm going to bring up this question on the screen, which is from Jay, which is what's the potential deal out there for Denver involving Gallo or Chandler? And at the same time as asking you this, I just want to know, do you think that this team needs to make a trade? Do you think that they definitely have to make a trade by the trade deadline, or do you think that the fact that they played better recently means there's a good chance that they'll just stand pat?
Here, I mean, when you're looking at I'll tell you, man. When you look at the Denver Nuggets and Wilson Chandler, he's a movable piece, but I don't think you move Danilo Gallinari, especially the way he's played the last month. I mean, he's averaging 19.9 points, I think, in the last 14 games, and he's changing games with his offense. His 3-point shot, if you can believe it, is going in the basket when he shoots it. So that's been a nice change of pace. And the fact is, I mean, I've said this from the day they got him, that he's the most talented player on the Nuggets. So now you can make the argument with Iguodala, but I love Gallinari's game when he's clicking, and lately he's been clicking. I mean, you could argue if the All-Star reserve votes didn't come out, like let's say they chose like the day before the All-Star game who the reserves should be, maybe by that point Gallinari is a serious contender for an All-Star spot. With the way he's been playing lately, and I know Masai Ujiri and them love him, but when you look at Wilson Chandler, here's a guy that's definitely a movable commodity. George Karl loves his defense, they love his brute play, but if they can find the right deal for him, I clearly can see them moving him. But the fact is, the Nuggets' plan is this. I mean, let's not forget they're the third youngest team in basketball, and it's not by much. Like if Andre Miller was 33 years old instead of 36 or whatever it is, they mathematically would be the youngest team in basketball. So consider that they're the youngest team in basketball and in good position to get that fourth or fifth spot. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So their plan is to grow the team, try to get to that second round for the first time since 2009, just the second time since they got Carmelo. That would be a step forward. And then their plan is by this time next year to say, okay, is Gallinari and Ty Lawson, are they all-star players? Do we have a poor man's situation here with Durant and Westbrook? But I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of questions, but the good thing for Nuggets fans that Masai Ujiri, Josh Kroenke, and Pete D'Alessandro and all of them have proven is that they're not afraid to trade anybody, and that's good. I mean, they love Nene as a human being, but he was not fitting in. They shipped him out of town, and we saw it with Aflalo as well. So they're not afraid to make a deal. I just don't necessarily see a deal coming in the next few weeks.
I've likened Andre Miller's backside to like a full cart at Home Depot that you're trying to steer around an aisle, and it just gets out of control. Like the way he uses his butt is impressive. Like he just moves guys out of the way. Have you ever seen a player dominate with his body, with a point guard like that, without having any athleticism at all? Like he shoots a set shot still.
Well, I'm more of a legs man, if I may. But I'm ridiculous. Coincidentally, you're asking me about this because I just spoke to George Karl about it this morning. I'm doing a big piece about Andre Miller's move, his YMCA game. I mean, it is something to see. There are a few players in the NBA that use their body in the way he does to get baskets. And like we mentioned before, he's 73 years old, so it's tough for him to speed around guys and such. I mean, he's got to use his smarts to get baskets as opposed to just his athleticism. And, I mean, he does these moves, these head fakes where he's like, and some guy will fall for it. They'll try to block that. It's ridiculous, but it works for Andre Miller because he watches a lot of film and he understands the defense and he's got these moves and yeah, I mean that was the joke around here earlier this season. Like the Nuggets' best player in the low post was Andre Miller with the way he backs guys down and before Gallinari splurged this past month, and I don't like to use splurge in conversation because people make sick jokes, not me. I would never think of a joke like that. But before Gallinari splurged this past month, George Karl said it, and you could argue that the Nuggets' MVP was Andre Miller, the reserve point guard. It was the way he changes games and the way he was effective in the fourth quarter. But now I think you have to say that it's Danilo Gallinari.
I want to steer it away from Nuggets talk just for a second. You wrote a piece on Russell Westbrook not too long ago. I think we all saw him on national TV with his little exchange with Chris and him getting frustrated with Cabo on the court. I think you have a line in that saying Westbrook is a player you either hate or you hate. So my first question is, does that make you a hater? And do you enjoy watching Russell Westbrook play, or is it just kind of a frustrating experience for you?
Wow. Well, I mean, Russell Westbrook. I mean, if I'm a Nuggets fan, I'm hating him so much. I mean, there's so much to hate about him. But in a weird, sick way, just basketball observer Benjamin, kind of fascinated by him. because he's just so brash and doesn't care. And I love his passion. And if you're a Thunder fan, it's such a funny odd couple. I think we'll look back in basketball history at him and Durant, just like these two just wildly different personas, somehow coming together and creating history and basketball magic, if you will. I mean, that stuff with the mascot, though, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, basically, to put it in perspective, the Nuggets fans, their favorite thing at the game is not the game. It's this stupid thing where Rocky, the mascot, stands at half court and does the backward shot. And he's gotten pretty good at it to where maybe within like 6 attempts, he'll make it. And he does it in the fourth quarter. And then this year, they added to where if Rocky makes a shot, they got it sponsored. If Rocky makes the shot, everyone gets free queso. So now there's like something on the line here. And Russell Westbrook, who was a Nuggets killer to begin with. I mean, I think he averages like 48 points per game or something against the Nuggets career-wise. I might be off by a point or two on that. But he goes and blocks the shot. And, like, the boos were deafening. It was clear, like, the only time I'd ever heard boos louder in the arena was when Kobe Bryant, like, would play for the Nuggets. And because of the Colorado thing, everyone hates him. And the boos were loud. So at that point, it's like, all right, Russell Westbrook, he's a jerk. I can't believe he did that. All right, let's boo him when he gets the ball. But Rocky goes back to do it again, and Westbrook not only does it again, catches the shot that was going to go in and get everybody queso, but he takes the ball, throws it in the stands. The boos got even louder. I could not believe my eyes. But then, in perfect Westbrook fashion, like only Westbrook would do something that like schoolyard bully-esque, but then feed off the negative energy to succeed. He basically hit a huge three-pointer that sent the game into overtime, and I could tell he's fired up from the fans. But here's a funny point that was pointed out to me by Deacon Gray, a Nuggets fan. So, yes, Westbrook stole the queso twice from 17,000 Nuggets fans. But here's the thing. A lot of stadiums do this, or a lot of teams. If the Nuggets score 110 points or more, the next day at Taco Bell from 4 to 6, you get 4 tacos for $1 with the purchase of some drink or some crap like that. But nevertheless, you get the tacos. So the Nuggets, they were winning like 98-95 or something when Westbrook hit the 3. So the game goes to overtime, and the Nuggets won like 112-108 or something. So because of Westbrook's 3, they went to overtime, and everyone got tacos.
It's probably my favorite moment of the season. Like it was just a phenomenal scene, and the fact that he did it twice. I mean, you know, he was trolling us with his outfits in the playoffs last year, but that just took it to a new level. Benjamin Hochman, we can read you on http://www.denverpost.com, correct?
Yeah. That's the URL.
And we can follow you at Nuggets News on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was great.
I enjoyed it. Let me know if you ever want me back again. I'll be similarly ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, let's go to Dagger Smash Noted to end this. I'm going to take the dagger and the smash because I like to talk anyway. So I figure I'll go a little extra today. My first dagger. Talking about this on Twitter last night. Not basketball related, so that was probably predictable. There's no way you can watch Jurassic Park Lost World, and think it's better than the third Jurassic Park. Like, it's just not. Like, there's 20 extra minutes in the second Jurassic Park that just don't belong. The entire storyline with Malcolm's daughter just doesn't belong at all. It's stupid. I know it's a precursor to Gabby Douglas, but it doesn't do anything for the movie, and it's just ridiculous. The birdcage in the third one makes it that much better than the second one automatically. So that's my dagger for today. My smash. I've been watching the movie 21 Jump Street, not the TV show, but the movie this afternoon, and I don't know if I hate the movie, if I hate myself for actually enjoying it so far. I've only been through like the first 25 minutes, but something's happening in me right now, and I don't know that I feel comfortable with it. So I'm going to check back with me on Twitter. I'm going to report on how much I actually feel about it. But those are my daggers and my smashes.
Mine noted is that for somebody who lives in Toronto, watching Jose Calderon play for the Pistons last night was a profoundly weird experience. Just seeing him do the pregame interview, and they showed clips of him and Lawrence Frank like going through the plays before the game was just very, very odd. He's been 7.5 seasons here. He loved the city. He didn't want to go. And as somebody who's gotten to cover the team for the a little bit last year and all of this season, it's just really weird and different. And it was kind of fun when the game started because he was making all these good passes, even though he doesn't really know what the plays are. His teammates were missing them, but it was kind of like, okay, well, maybe his teammates will start making them as the game goes on. But no. Like before I knew it, they were down by 25, and it was just a disaster. And they were playing an interesting lineup. They had Calderon, Knight, Stuckey, Drummond, and Monroe. So you could look at that as 3 point guards and 2 centers if you want to. And I thought that was kind of fun. That was their 5 best players. But they just got killed no matter what lineup they threw out there. So I didn't end up actually sticking with that game for too long. But it was interesting for the first little bit.
Yeah, it's I want Jose to succeed there, but I don't know that it's going to happen over the next couple of months. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have hopefully a very special guest on Thursday, arguably the best guest we've ever had. We'll try to lock that in tomorrow. And Roger Bain, take us out.
I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis of mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.